Welcome, everyone. This is another monthly Q&A for our How We Align Our Thoughts with Our Purpose. And we are interviewing very successful leaders who have lived it out for themselves and are purposely owning their presence and their leadership. And we have an amazing guest with us today. He's a previous podcast guest from Addressing the Elephant in the Room, a friend of mine from many years ago. And Jason, you are a leader in leading your family, your business, and your community, never mind a construction business, and literally creating momentum in everything you do. So I know I could say a whole bunch more, but I'm going to let you give the highlights, and then we'll go into the questions.
Okay, wonderful. So I'll do a brief introduction. You already know my name is Jason Schroeder. I get to be the COO of Elevate and then the companies that Elevate owns. I was in construction for about 22 to 24 years, and my spouse and the CEO of our company continually prompted me to start something. And so the first book that she gave us was Entree Leadership by Dave Ramsey. And I think there was another one called Disruptors. And so we've been preparing for that for quite some time. And then in 2020, we decided to go ahead and use our retirement to start the business and head in this direction. And so we have been doing that for about 4.5 years, and it's been super awesome. So we have 11 kids together, and we are having the time of our lives. So there you go.
I love how you said that. We have 11 kids together, and we're having the time of our life.
Yeah,
That alone is a statement in itself. So,
that's awesome.
uh, thank you for sharing the short version of that. It's been a whole journey for you, writing books, building framework, building a team. Which one of those do you want to start with?
Anyone, do you want to throw something specific at me? I
I
love.
do.
Okay, go ahead. Any of them, let's go.
So
So
Jason, first of all, your mindset, you said that you both went into a preparation, some reading, some preparing, and you knew that this was going to be an undertaking. What did you do with your own mind to prepare you to take on a very big commitment? With
well, yep. Sorry. So it may be nice one day to have Kate on this because she prompted everything, and it's not flattering speak. It really is. It's a real thing. So Kate, my wife, and obviously or not obviously, but our CEO and somebody who I love very much, continually said, well, if this is a vision, then we need to get going. You could do this, you could do this. The first thing that started everything was reading and starting a podcast. So the way those two things started is I learned from I think it was Tony Robbins. He said, read a book a week. And so I started reading a book a week. That does more for your mindset than anything. And a lot of people, I think, discount it, especially folks in construction where I am attempting to influence. But boy, it is the thing to do. As soon as you learn more of these skills, you start to outsource a lot of the help that you need, and you leverage your resources and you become resourceful. So like reading books was the biggest thing. And then going to the first Tony Robbins event, it was actually a Tony Robbins, I think Dean Graziosi, and Gary Vee, like Phoenix entrepreneurial type event that I went to. And I was like, I have to start the podcast. So I started. And the key for me from a mindset standpoint is that everything looks impossible. I remember thinking, oh, I'm going to start a business. And I was like, okay, I'm going to carve out an hour. And I didn't have an office. I didn't have a desk. I didn't even have notepads. I was like, okay, what do I do now? But once I had taken that Tony Robbins training, it was like, okay, start a podcast. All right, that's something to grab onto. Okay, now do this. Okay, now do LinkedIn. Now do the next thing. And now my perspective is like 1,000 times larger than it was before. So the mindset that I would recommend for anybody that wants to make progress is the mindset of being able to get help and leverage your resources. And I would also probably be redundant and say, and be resourceful and know what to do, because everything somebody wants to do has been done, and it's probably in a book or a podcast or outlined somewhere.
the statement you made, leverage your resources and you will be resourceful, was so powerful. And that is what helped you, not only everything you did to leverage your resources, yet that takes us into building the team.
Yeah.
So you literally used resources that were available online, etc., through books, outlines, etc. Yet you have also built a very healthy team. And will you speak more about that?
Yeah, the team happened by accident. So Kate Kate was not a part of the business to start with, but she became CEO by sheer competence and earning it.
Mhm.
There, that wasn't gifted in any way, shape, or form. And there's another a partner that we have, Kevin Rice, who's just brilliant, who went to school for business and finances. And when you put the three of us together, it's like 1 + 1 + 1 equals like 27. It's just exponential. We just mesh really well together. And so that happened to me by accident. But there's a really great business system called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, that says you must have a visionary and an integrator, and then organize the right people and get them on the bus. And then Jim Collins says the number one metric is the right people in the right seats on the bus. And so those things happened to me by accident. But in retrospect, I would have been doing like $15,000 a month in work if it wasn't for the team, because I'm a pretty decent integrator, but I don't see that vision. I'm a little bit stubborn and rigid from my construction background, and I'm not seeing those things. So Kate's always, let's push, let's do this, let's be entrepreneurial, let's take this risk. And Kevin's like, I see the vision. So without them, we wouldn't have anything. And now we're at like $350,000 a month in revenue. And then with the construction company, that company will be like 15 to 50 million dollars a year in revenue. And then who knows what it could become from that. So having the right team is always, in my opinion, the first thing. And then let me tell you the second part of the story. We have about 50 people throughout the world, in Europe and in Mexico and Colombia, and just really Pakistan and India and like everywhere. One in the anyway, I can't remember the other country, but in Eastern Europe. Anyway, so like they're everywhere. Wonderful people working remotely. This is how it started. I was like, we need a good employee. And I was like, hire in the US, hire in the US. And I love the US, by the way. There's nothing negative there. Kate was like, hey, you just did an LCI speaking engagement in Mexico. I wonder if anybody there would be interested. And so we were able to hire two people, and they're college educated. They're civil engineers. Most of them have their masters. They're in one of the top universities in the entire world, in their university in Mexico, better educated than I could ever think of being. And they're the most wonderful, sweet, amazing, loyal, hardworking, kind, and progressive people I've ever met in my entire life. And so we continually build that team. And so it happened by accident. But really, it was all about being open. So having that visionary person, and then also being very, very intentional about the vibe or the culture that we had. And Kate always has this saying that says the vibe will take care of the vibe, meaning that
Mhm.
if we're acting like jerks, we're going to hire jerks. If we're acting like diminishing leaders, we're going to hire diminishing leaders. But if we have a culture taking care of people with high energy, and we're excited about what we do, that will magnetize. And that ended up being what happened. So
Wow.
I most of the time when we consult with companies, the first step is there's an integrator, but they don't have a visionary, or they're a visionary and they don't have an integrator, or they don't have a leadership team. That is key. And there has to be healthy conflict in challenging each person to head into the future.
The EOS model is a very powerful model, and it is a tool for accountability. And it sounds like you have lived it out at a high level. And you also have purposely expanded to allow yourself to think outside the box and allow yourself to have multiple companies, multiple teams, multiple locations, which allowed you to expand at the level you've expanded, which is so powerful.
Yeah.
And
And everything gets easier, and we're able to serve the industry better, because if it was just me, we would have two books instead of 12, So yeah.
well, and Jason, you said something else that I want to come back to. You said, I'm working to work my way through the construction industry. And we've talked a little bit about this before off camera. And this is a industry that has a lot of always done it this way mindsets. And when you are working to create momentum and inspire change, that is a daily conversation by conversation process that you and I know in the coaching world takes a whole lot of commitment and willingness to, and it goes back to that vibe, right? You know the value of what you're working to create
Yeah.
and transform. How do you take that day by day? And then when did you start seeing momentum?
So I love that, and I have a beautiful answer, and you've probably talked about it on your platforms multiple times. I've realized, so when I first started out, I was like, I will change this industry and it will happen. And that's a good attitude. And it's what it takes for you to cash in your, hundreds of thousands of dollars of retirement and take the tax penalty. But after a while, you realize that it's not going to happen, that it's really all about changing one life at a time and then adding the most value. And so it's kind of like relationships. Like if you're like me and my wife, we're gonna be happy. I'm gonna control this. We're gonna, then it's this tight, clamped, in toxic environment that's not going to help. And then finally, after being married for a while, you're like, I'm here. This is my human. I'm going to add value, and everything works out. So this is probably the biggest point. It probably sounds cliche like a cat poster, but what works for us, it's not specific strategies. It's not um, a specific book. It's that everything we do is altruistically designed to add value to people. When we send a sales email, or when we do a boot camp, or when we sell a book, people know I've given them thousands of dollars of free content at our expense. And if they want to go learn more, they know they can go or not go, but it is not, they're not being used. Like we are adding value. And so I heard that from Tony Robbins or somebody else, I can't remember, but a lot of people talk about adding value. And so instead of being worried about it, or um, being caught up in the thick of thin things, we've just been like, does this add value? What will help the industry? Will it be a book or an online class or a podcast or whatever? And that has made all the difference. And to be real transparent with you, and this is not going to be good, you might have to correct me, but we still have a hard time knowing where people come from. We still have a hard time, and we try so hard knowing where our sales metrics and the data and everything, people are coming, and we don't know where they hurt us, because we're not yet put together well enough. But one thing is always the same when people talk to us, is that whether they heard a YouTube video or a podcast or just got an email or whatever the value was, it created trust so well that now they're willing to work with us. And so I would say, I don't know exactly where the answer to this question is going, other than if somebody wants to do a business, a lot of times it's like, well, should I do this and how should I market it? And I'm like, just start giving, just start uh, adding value, and build trust. And yes, competency is a part of that. So like our first book and our podcast are like, oh, Jason knows what he's talking about. I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I'm just saying, like, it's like, oh yeah, we can do this great thing. Well, can you? Right. Well, listening to the podcast and the book, they're like, oh yeah, they can. So um it was about trust. It is about partnership. It is about adding value. And we have established ourselves as people that folks can count on, and that we really are who we say we are. We are altruistic. We are here to help. And so people come and spend money when they want, and it's a win-win for both of us. I don't know if that made any sense, but
It made all kinds of sense.
yeah,
So one of the terminologies we use is the concept of net value, which means that all people, and including ourselves, long and short-term pros and cons, are considered in giving value. And we don't want to overgive, yet. Well, let me correct that. We always want to give value, and sometimes it's going to be over, and yet sometimes there are boundaries required. Some people self-sacrifice and they don't know how to put their own mask on. So we work to help people discover that. You, Jason, have set up an amazing team to surround yourself with. So you are purposely building systems and structures so each person's owning their lane. As
yeah,
you said, they're owning where they belong on the bus, and they are being purposeful about being in that lane, right?
yes,
Yet
yes,
they know how to support each other. So the first thing you said is number one, that you learned that even though you are working to change a industry that has been very well oiled in a whole lot of different perspectives, and not everyone will agree with it certain times, right?
yeah,
uh, you are understanding that one relationship at a time is the beginning. And
yes,
so then you learn to multiply yourself by books, by videos, by marketing, by systems and structures that you're creating value that is coming from a multitude of places. And maybe one of your tweaks for your marketing team is to put in some sourcing clarifications in that marketing, right? Say,
Yeah.
okay, which one of that, which place did that come from, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
eh,
we've recently done that. To your point, thank you for that. That's a
yeah,
very
you're
nice
welcome.
reminder. But and I'm still just as excited as I was before. And it's um the you the people that want to hear are going to eventually hear it, and it's going to make all the difference. And we read the positive or negative comments that we get on our podcast every episode, and it's thousands at this point of people that have written in and said, this has completely changed my perspective, my family, my marriage. And even one of those is worth it all. So there is one other thing. The I I don't know if it ties in perfectly, but let me say it. I wildly underestimated the impact of having a book, and I overestimated how hard it would be. And at the end of the day, it's, if anybody ever wants help with that, they can call either of us, right? Or anybody else who's done it. Um, it's very impactful. And then the other thing is, I will transparently say that in the first 3.5 years of the business, I never worked harder in my entire life. And I'm super glad that it's over and that we now have that team, but it is a grind. We're at 1,142 podcast episodes.
Wow.
We have thousands of YouTube videos. LinkedIn has been going on for 5 years, 3 posts a week without fail and never stopping. So there's a lot of this grind type stuff that it takes to get the foundation. But now, if somebody got me on the phone and they were like, "Can you show this?" "Oh, I've got a presentation." "Oh, well, what about this?" "Here's a podcast." "Well, there's a video." "Here's the thing. Here's a book." We can go do it. Like, it takes a while to build that foundation. And so I would say that when people are looking at taking a next step or starting a business or whatever, find your thing. Where do you share your message, and do that, and do it with passion, and find your people, your tribe, and keep with it. And all good things will happen after that, because the value comes first, then people trust you and will do business with you.
Such truth, Jason, and congratulations for the consistent grind and the consistency altogether, because you're living the value of that. And more often than not, people get hung up on wanting to recreate instead of being consistent with their
Yeah.
message and their purpose. And you have aligned your thoughts with your purpose, which is exactly why we asked you to be here. So,
Oh,
is there
thank you.
anything I didn't think of asking you that you were prepared to answer, or anything else you wanted to share besides the new book that's coming out?
Oh, oh, well, thank you. I will say that it is a boxing match. Like, if you really look at boxing, I'm not an expert, but boxing matches are about endurance. It's not about the one hit. It's not about the this or that. It's who from an endurance standpoint can stay in this the longest. And that is what I think is what it's all about in business. And I just want to candidly tell people, like, you're going to start a podcast and you and your mom will listen to it, and you'll be the only listeners for the first 6 months, and that's okay. And you're going to be on LinkedIn and you get 5 likes on a post, and that's going to happen for 2 years, and that's okay. And you're going to sell a book and or publish a book, and you've only sold 10 copies, and 8 of those were your family, and that's okay. The consistency, to your point, is the key. And if you keep going, then it will work out. You will find your people, because most businesses fail. Most podcasts go into fatigue and stop. Most everything uh, pauses. And so once people know, no, you're in this for the long haul, you have something to say, and it works, um, then it's going to work. And probably one last thing that I just thought of is, I really strongly believe in feedback loops. And this is not a dig at anybody, but like, for us, we do consulting, but we also have a construction company. Our contracts are written that we get paid when we get results, right? So that is a lot different, having a feedback loop that we're tied to from an incentive standpoint, versus just repeating things. So if you're giving marriage counseling, are you married or do you work with married people? If you're a construction consultant, are you actually out there boots on the ground? If you're starting a business, have you started a business? I would say that that feedback loop of actually getting real results has been also another huge thing for us.
And living in the industry. Yes, you've been living it daily. Mr. DeSena, any questions before we wrap up our day? Maybe. There you
Of
go.
course. So first, I'd like a little bit of shameless promotion. Um, what is your podcast? What's the name of it?
So thank you for asking. It's nice to meet you. The podcast is the Elevate Construction Podcast.
And Jason, Mr. DeSena, a family is in the business. So
Oh, wonderful.
yeah, it'll be great for sharing that resource. What else, Mr. DeSena?
And so you talked about, and April and I have been going back and forth about this. I'm glad I was able to get back. Um, I pretty sure I heard you say thousands of videos.
Yes.
Thousand.
Yes. And
Over 1,100.
well, there's quite a few. And I don't know if this is where you're getting at, but the best advice I've ever gotten is you're going to, and I don't advocate sending out crappy content for long, but I've had a lot of like hundreds of crappy videos to learn to how to get to a better solution. First website was crappy. First 100 videos were crappy. First pod. Well, I did okay with the podcast. They might get worse over time, but like I think that's another big thing that you just prompted me. It's Stephen, right?
Yes.
Is that a lot of times folks don't want to start because they're worried about, is it going to be perfect? And the key isn't perfection. The key is starting, and the perfection will come. Like right now we have a great website after 4.5 years. Like now we have really professional videos after 3.5 years. Like it's going to take time. And I think the prize okay, this is super funny. If anybody wants to look this up, go look up Post Malone early video. And I saw it on an Instagram post, and I watched it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't watch that. That's horrible. It's such a weird song. And now he's so famous. And if you look back at anyone who's successful, it wasn't perfection. It was that they started and they kept with it. So I love that, Stephen.
Okay,
Great
so
question.
where can I find you on YouTube?
Okay, so I'll give them all to you. On LinkedIn, it's Jason Schroeder, Jason, and then last name Schroeder. And then the YouTube channel is the same. It's the Jason Schroeder YouTube channel. And the other one is the Elevate Construction Podcast. And we have lots of other places where we do social media, but those are the three main ones. We've attempted TikTok, Instagram, X, and Facebook, but our people reside on LinkedIn, YouTube, and the podcast.
And that was my next question: is who is your audience? Are you doing? I want to build a house. Are you hitting, corporations? I want to build a multi, apartments or skyscrapers. What does elevation construction build?
Yeah, so we Elevate Construction. We consult on residential, commercial, and industrial construction projects for either business, field operations, or individual training. And we also do project controls and project recovery for that. The people that listen, there's two groups. And I think it's funny that there's a little story about this. I went to a One Republic concert, and they were all, and I love older people, but they're all like 60 or 55 to 65 year old people listening to One Republic. And I'm like, I expected to see a bunch of teenage males here or something like that, right? Or there's other bands who are like really cool and like really masculine, and their best fans are 14 to 18-year-old girls. You know what I mean? Like you can't control who your fans are. So the people that it was just as a surprise, which by the way, having 15 to 16-year-old girls as fans as a rock group is fantastic. I'm not getting after that at all. I'm just saying who you think would be your audience never ends up being that way. Right.
Right.
So the two types of people that love us are owners that care about people, and that is That is, we do know those metrics, or growth mindseted professionals that want to do better in their life. Those are the two. And then the types of work that really come to us are data centers, multifamily, lots of residential and civil. I thought it would be hospitals, laboratories, and these types of projects, but it's typically data centers, multifamily, residential, and civil. So it's really interesting. So that's our audience. But we also, if you're a 25-year-old male want to come to the concert, we can do that for you as well. But we really appreciate our 15 to 17-year-old girl fan base as a rock band. So,
That's interesting. Cool.
Those are all great. So Jason, thank you again for taking the time with us today. It is very powerful. You have added all your contact information, and I will absolutely ask your wife to join you in our next one. We do restart our podcast, because that'll be a lot of fun to have both of you with us. Thank you again. And any closing comments?
The closing comments are, don't worry about figuring out all the details. There's someone out there that knows how to do what you're doing. So if you want to start a podcast, get the course. If you want to write a book, go take the masterclass. If you want to start a business, go talk to somebody. Proximity is power, and proximity can be with a person that's done it before, a book that explains it, or a course that guides the way. So just make sure that you're realizing, and you two already know this, but for the audience, is like who you are around and what inputs you have in your brain is more important than almost any other consideration. You can't do it by yourself. So turn decades into days by being resourceful and using your resources.
Leveraging your resources to be resourceful. Such a powerful statement. Great job.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you just took away everybody's excuse.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, yeah.
Thank you.
It's fear. Oh, there's one last thing. I know we're out of time, but
That's okay.
when I started the business, we cashed in our retirement. We had 11 kids at home. It was $1,600 a month minimum in groceries. We had no business doing it. We only had one client. And I can tell you, in starting the business, and by the way, that's not official financial advice. That's illegal. I'm not authorized or licensed to give financial advice. But what I'm saying is, I was no more safe in my corporate job from a life standpoint than I was when we started the business.
Sure.
Security is mostly a superstition. It doesn't exist in life or in nature. And so life is either a daring adventure or nothing.
Perfectly said. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Awesome. This has been